again. Oh, it's a beautiful sunny day here today. Cold but sunny. How's everybody doing?
I started using custom hair care products from pros after
What just happened here?
Wrong products for my straight hair.
Okay.
My hair has
all right. Okay, gotcha. All right, let's pop out the chat. How's everybody doing today? I'm still, I'm really I really want to have my rooms switched for Easter, but Howie's also telling me to be a little more realistic. So we'll see. We'll see. But, things are moving a lot slower than I had anticipated. Now let's put this on live chat. And I need to start a playlist for this, don't I? So save, new playlist, these happy golden years. Okay. And create and save. Okay. Now let's get this chat restored. Okay. How's it going? And we'll put it on live chat. Shall we? Shall we begin? And no, this is not the final book, because there was later on was found notes for the first 4 years of their marriage. So it wasn't really written like these. It was just kind of thrown together, but we will be reading that too. Hello, hello, hello. These happy golden years. Chapter 1. Laura leaves home. Sunday afternoon was clear. This isn't the way this works. This is the way this works. Forgot where I was for a second. Chapter 1. Laura leaves home. Sunday afternoon was clear, and the snow-covered prairie sparkled in the sunshine. A little wind blew gently from the south, but it was so cold that the sled runners squeaked as they slid on the hard-packed snow. Oh, gosh. Sorry, I got an itch on my back here. The horse's hooves made a dull clop, clop, clop. Pa did not say anything. Sitting beside him on the board laid across the bobsled, Laura did not say anything either. There was nothing to say. She was on her way to teach school. Only yesterday she was a schoolgirl. Now she was a school teacher. This had happened so suddenly. Laura could hardly stop expecting that tomorrow she would be going to school with her little sister Carrie and sitting in her seat with Ida Brown. But tomorrow she would be teaching school. She did not really know how to do it. She never had taught school. She was not 16 years old yet. Even for 15, she was small, and now she felt very small. The slightly rolling snowy land lay empty all around. The high, thin sky was empty overhead. Laura did not look back, but she knew that the town was miles behind her now. It was only a small, dark blot on the empty prairie's whiteness. In the warm sitting room, where Ma and Carrie and Grace were far away, Brewster settlement was still miles ahead. It was 12 miles from town. Laura did not know what it was like. She did not know anyone there. She had seen Mr. Brewster only once, when he came to hire her to teach the school. He was thin and brown like any homesteader. He did not have much to say for himself. Pa sat looking ahead into the distance while he held the reins in his mittened hands and now and then chirruped to the horses. That's what that is. But he knew how Laura felt. At last he turned his face toward her and spoke as if he were answering her dread of tomorrow. Well, Laura, you're a school teacher now. We knew you would be, didn't we? Though we didn't expect it so soon. Do you think I can, Pa? Laura answered. Just suppose the children won't mind me when they see how little I am. Of course you can, Pa assured her. You've never failed yet at anything you've tried to do, have you? Well, no, Laura admitted, but I've never tried to teach school. You've tackled every job that ever came your way, Pa said. You never shirked, and you always stuck to it till you did what you set out to do. Success gets to be a habit like anything else a fella keeps doing. Again, there was a silence except for the squeaking of the sled runners and the clop, clop, clop of the horses' feet on the hard snow. Oh, my power just went out. Well, folks, I'm just going to keep on reading. Oh, see, it comes back on pretty quick. Except for my computer. And so I can't see the chat because it's going to take a while for my computer to reset. There we go. Sorry about that, folks. Again, there was silence except for the squeaking of the sled runners and the clop, clop, clop of the horses' feet on the hard snow. Laura felt a little better, it was true. She always had kept on trying. She had always had to. Well, now she had to teach school. Sorry, folks, I got to start my computer up here. Or I can't see the chat. Come on now. Come on now. Unless my computer is going to decide to... Nope, okay. Alrighty. And let's hit this. And hit restore. And there we are. You're back. I have no idea, Game Queen. I live in the country, and we got a lot of wind going on. So I don't know. It happens. But I have power stations. So let me see. Well, now she had to teach school. Remember that time on Plum Creek Half Pint? Pa said. Your ma and I went to town and a blizzard came up, and you got the whole woodpile in the house. Laura laughed out loud, and Pa's laugh rang like great bells in the cold stillness. How little and scared and funny she had been that day so long ago. That's the way to tackle things, Pa said. Have confidence in yourself, and you can lick anything. You have confidence in yourself. That's the only way to make other folks have confidence in you, is by having confidence in yourself. He paused and then said, one thing you must guard against. What, Pa? You are so quick, Flutterbudget. You're apt to act or speak first and think afterwards. Now you must do your thinking first and speak afterwards. If you remember to do that, you will not have any trouble. I will, Pa, she said earnestly. It was really too cold to talk. Snug under the heavy blankets and quilts, they went on silently towards the south. The cold wind blew against their faces. A faint trace of sled runners stretched out before them. There was nothing else to see but the endless low white land and the huge pale sky, and the horses' blue shadows blotting out the sparkles from the snow. The wind kept Laura's thick black woolen veil rippling before her eyes. Her breath was in a frozen patch of frost in the veil that kept slapping cold and damp against her mouth and nose. At last she saw a house ahead. Very small at first. It grew larger as they came nearer to it. Half a mile away there was another smaller one, and far beyond it another. Then still another appeared. 4 houses, that was all. They were far apart and small on the white prairie. Pa pulled up the horses. Mr. Brewster's house looked like 2 claim shanties put together to make a peaked roof. It was a tar paper roof and was bare. And melted snow had run into big icicles that hung from the eaves in blobby columns larger than Laura's arms. They looked like huge, jagged teeth. Some bit into the snow, some were broken off. The broken chunks of ice lay frozen in the dirty snow around the door, where the dishwater had been thrown. There was no curtain at the window, but smoke blew from the stovepipe that was anchored to the roof with wires. Mr. Brewster opened the door. A child was squalling in the house, and he spoke loudly to be heard. "Come in, Ingalls, come in and warm yourself." "Thank you," Pa replied, "but it's a long 12 miles back, and I better get going." Laura slid out from under the blankets quickly. Geez, I hope that's my sewing machine that's just arrived. Because I'm really ticked. It was supposed to be here. The iron I ordered was supposed to be here. Let me just check. Oh, my camera's here. Nope. No sign of my sewing machine from Walmart. No sign of my iron. The only thing that's arrived out of that order is my fan. Take care, Kathy. Laura slid out from under the blankets, quickly, not to let the cold in. Pa handed her Ma's satchel that held her change of underclothes, her other dress, and her school books. "Goodbye, Pa," she said. "Goodbye, Laura." His blue eyes smiled encouragement to her, but 12 miles was too far to drive often. She would not see him again for 2 months. She went quickly into the house. Coming from the bright sunshine, she could not see anything for a moment. Mr. Brewster said, "This is Mrs. Brewster, and Lib, here's the teacher." A sullen-looking woman stood by the stove, stirring something in a frying pan. A little boy was hanging onto her skirts and crying. His face was dirty, and his nose needed a handkerchief. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Brewster," Laura said cheerfully, as possibly as she could. "Just go into the other room and take off your wraps," Mrs. Brewster said. "Hang them behind the curtain where the sofa is." She turned her back on Laura and went on stirring the gravy in the pan. Laura did not know what to think. She couldn't have done anything to offend Mrs. Brewster. She went into the other room. The partition stood under the peak of the roof and divided the house in 2 equal parts. On either side of the partition, the rafters and the tar paper sloped down to low walls. The board walls were well battened down every crack. They were not finished inside. The bare studding stood against them. This was like Pa's house on the claim, but it was smaller and had no ceiling overhead. That would be the first thing you would think of, because heat rises and a ceiling would keep the heat in, whereas it would just go right out this tar paper roof, right? The other room was very cold, of course. It had one window looking out at the empty prairie covered with snow. Against the wall under the window, against the wall under the window was the sofa, a bottom sofa with a curved wooden back, and one end curved up. A bed was made up on the sofa. Brown calico curtains hung against the wall at each end of it on a string that ran across above the window so they could be pulled together and hide the sofa. Opposite, a bed stood against the wall, and at the foot of the bed there was just space enough for a bureau and a trunk. Laura hung her coat and muffler and veil and hood on the nails behind the calico curtain and set Ma's satchel on the floor under them. She stood shivering in the cold, not wanting to go into the warm room where Mrs. Brewster was. But she had to, so she did. Mrs. Brewster sat by the stove, holding the little boy on his... Mr. Brewster sat by the stove, holding the little boy on his knee. Mrs. Brewster was scraping the gravy into a bowl. The table was set with plates and knives carelessly askew on a smudged white cloth. The cloth was crooked on the table. "May I help you, Mrs. Brewster?" Laura said bravely. Mrs. Brewster did not answer. She dumped the potatoes angrily into a dish and thumped it on the table. The clock on the wall whirred, getting ready to strike, and Laura saw that the time was 5 minutes to 4. "Nowadays, breakfast is so late, we only eat 2 meals a day," Mr. Brewster explained. "Whose fault is it, I'd like to know?" Mrs. Brewster blazed out. "And if I didn't do enough slaving morning to night in this..." Mr. Brewster raised his voice. "I only meant the days are so short." "Then say what you mean." Mrs. Brewster slammed the high chair to the table, snatched the little boy, and sat him in it hard. "Dinner's ready," Mr. Brewster said to Laura. She sat down in the vacant place. Mr. Brewster passed her the potatoes and the salt pork and gravy. The food was good, but Mrs. Brewster's silence was so unpleasant that Laura could hardly swallow. "Is the schoolhouse far from here?" she tried to ask cheerfully. Mr. Brewster said, "Half a mile cross lots. It's a claim shanty. The fellow that homesteaded that quarter section couldn't stick it out. He gave it up and went back east." Then he too was silent, the little boy fretting, trying to reach everything on the table. Suddenly he flung his tin plate of food on the floor. Mrs. Brewster slapped his hands and screamed, and he screamed. He went on screaming and kicking the table leg. At last the meal was over. Mr. Brewster took the milk pail from its nail on the wall and went to the stable. Mrs. Brewster sat the little boy on the floor, and gradually he stopped crying, while Laura helped to clear the table. Then she got an apron from Ma's satchel, tied it over her brown princess dress, and took a towel to dry the dishes while Mrs. Brewster washed them. "What's your little boy's name, Mrs. Brewster?" she asked. She hoped that Mrs. Brewster would be more pleasant now. "John," said Mrs. Brewster. "That's such a nice name," Laura said. "People can call him Johnny while he's little, and when he grows up, John is a good name for a man. Do you call him Johnny now?" Mrs. Brewster did not answer. Silence grew more and more dreadful. Laura felt her face growing burning hot. She went on wiping the dishes blindly. When they were done, Mrs. Brewster threw out the dishwater, hung the dishpan on its nail. She sat in the rocking chair and rocked idly, while Johnny crawled under the stove and dragged the cat out by its tail. The cat scratched him, and he bawled. Mrs. Brewster went on rocking. Laura did not dare to interfere. Johnny screamed, Mrs. Brewster sullenly rocked, and Laura sat in the straight chair by the table and looked out at the prairie. The road went straight across the snow and far away out of sight. 12 miles away was home. Ma was getting supper now. Carrie was home from school. They were laughing and talking with Grace. Pa would come in and swing Grace up in his arms as he used to lift Laura when she was little. They would all go on talking at the supper table. Later they would sit in the lamplight, cozily reading while Carrie studied and Pa would play the fiddle. The room grew dark and darker. Laura could not see the road anymore. At last Mr. Brewster came in with the milk. Then Mrs. Brewster lighted the lamp. She strained the milk and set the pan away, while Mr. Brewster sat down and opened a newspaper. Neither of them spoke. The unpleasant silence settled heavily down. Laura did not know what to do. It was too early to go to bed. There was no other paper and not a book in the room. Then she thought of her school books. Going into the cold, dark bedroom, and she groped into Ma's satchel and found her history book by the sense of touch. Taking it into the kitchen, she sat down by the table and began to study. At least nothing hinders my studying, she thought grimly. She felt hurt and sore, as if she had been beaten. Stop it. But gradually she forgot where she was by keeping her mind fixed on history. At last she heard the clock strike 8. Then she stood up, said good night politely. Mrs. Brewster did not answer, but Mr. Brewster answered, "Good night." In the bedroom, Laura shivered out of her dress and petticoats and into her flannel nightgown. She got under the covers of the sofa and pulled the calico curtains around it. The pillow was of feathers, and there were sheets and plenty of quilts, but the sofa was very narrow. She heard Mrs. Brewster talking angrily and fast. The quilts were over Laura's head so that only the tip of her nose was out in the cold, but she could not help hearing Mrs. Brewster's quarreling. "Suits you, I keep a boarder," she heard. "And this horrible country out here. School teacher indeed. Been a school teacher myself if I hadn't married a..." Laura thought, "She doesn't want to board the teacher, that's all. She'd be just as cross to anybody else." She did her best not to hear any more and go to sleep. But all night in her sleep, she was careful not to fall off the narrow sofa, and she was dreading tomorrow when she must begin to teach school. Thank you for joining me for the first chapter in These Happy Golden Years. I will do my best to keep these chapters coming at least once or twice a week. And after that, we'll read the first 4 years. And after that, we'll move on to finish the series on Anne of Green Gables. Unless you want me to start that series over live from the very first Anne of Green Gables book, let me know and we'll go from there. Okay. I have I think I have the first 4 books that are pre-recorded, but if you want them live, please answer in the comments after this video closes whether or not you would like me to start Anne of Green Gables right from the start. Okay? Live. This is Mrs. Volpe from Reading with Beverly Volpe, and thank you for joining me. Reading is one of the things I love most. Take care. God bless.